Ben Forrest. I flew with the 388th Bomb Group, the 563rd Squadron, and the aircraft I flew in was Borrowed Time. And now you want me to continue? Okay.
How many missions then?
I flew a total of 29 missions and 3 sorties with different aircraft. I wish that I could, with different aircraft.
What position on the plane?
I was a ball turret gunner. We were in Borrowed Time, and we were flying a mission to Berlin. And Lieutenant Harkins was the pilot. Hadley was the co-pilot. Our bombardier was Neff. And
Was it deep penetration right there?
what's that?
A deep penetration?
Well, it was a deep penetration mission.
How long
yes.
did it take you to get to Berlin?
Well, it took us at least 4.5, 5 hours to get there.
Okay.
And of course, that length of time to get back.
Right.
But what I wanted to remember was can you stop? Stop. And we had dropped our bombs. It was bombs away, and I was following a smoke bomb from my group down to the target. And suddenly, my aircraft was it was hit with flak or something. And the next thing I knew, I was staring at the sky. I've been looking down at the smoke trail down to the target. The next thing I knew, I was looking straight up in the air. And I remember being on my back in the ball turret. I checked out each engine out, and they were all turning over beautifully. And I remember saying, "What's going on up there?" I was inquiring what the status was, and how do I start? My Hadley said, "Somebody give me a cigarette." This is the bombardier, I believe, Hadley. Whoops.
Co-pilot.
Or co-pilot. Co-pilot Hadley said, "Somebody give me a cigarette." And things straightened out, and I finally realized that we were under control, and I later, as we flew on a while, and we'd lost quite a bit of altitude. Incidentally, we were flying at about 29,000 feet, and we ended up at about 10,000 feet during the gyrations. And I did finally get out of my ball turret, get up and find out what was going on up front. And I found that Neff was, our bombardier was in the pilot's cockpit, and that Hadley was still in his co-pilot's position. Somehow the men had gotten our pilot, damn it, I've forgotten, because of name. Our pilot, who I've later visited, God, what was it? Isn't that amazing? Lying out in the bombardier's compartment with several of the crewmen tending him. They staunched the flow. He was hit in the nose with a piece of shrapnel and in the chest. And they had stopped or staunched the blood coming out of his nose and up forehead. The shrapnel went up through his nose and forehead. And they were taking care of him. And we were flying over at about 10,000 feet over a warm front, and it was, we were under control. And I stayed up for a while in the bombardier compartment and noticed everything was under control and went back to my ball. But it was so clear I didn't get in it. I did see some other fortresses that were in our same condition. They were flying back home over this cold front or warm front. And
Were they under attack? Were those fortresses under attack?
yeah, there were other fortresses. I did note some fortresses under attack, and they zipped down into the clouds and escaped, I presume. But we continued on over the warm front, and Hadley, the co-pilot, and with the help of Neff, got us back to our base, and we landed. We fired 2 red flares for wounded aboard, and they sent out a meat wagon to meet us when we landed, and they got a one of those bamboo stretchers, right, and they put the co-pilot in that and were able to carry him back to the aft exit and put him in the ambulance and take him in. And after this, we were sent to interrogation to describe what happened.
How late were you back to the base?
We were about an hour late back to our group. In other words, that cost us about an hour's time from what the group had gone through. I did note that we were spinning, and Neff during that period obviously got out of his bombardier position and replaced our pilot, who was he replaced the pilot. And the pilot's name is what immediately gets her.
Okay, we haven't heard of it.
This is Hadley. No, Hadley was the co-pilot. Hadley's co-pilot, and Neff replaced the pilot,
You know,
who was wounded. Next thing I knew, I was looking straight up in the sky, and we rotated several times at that point.
Okay.
That's a good point. Okay. I was following a bomb trail from our group drop. Are we going to work? Okay. I followed the bomb trail, and that was my job, was to follow the smoke trail from our bomb drop to find out if we had an accurate hit. And the next thing I knew, I was looking up into the sky. In other words, our aircraft changed position, and I was looking up. And then I noticed we went around. We did several rotations and finally leveled out. And that's when I asked, what's going on up there? And that's when things settled down, and apparently our engineer gunner was not cold at the time. He came to. He assisted the other men of the group of the aircraft and got the pilot out of his position and into the bombardier's compartment, where they treated him for severe wounds, and it appeared that he had blood coming out of his chest and out of his nose. And they were handling that, and Chuck Neff had replaced the pilot, and Hadley, the co-pilot, stayed in its position, even though he'd been hit in the leg with a piece of shrapnel also. And they navigated us back to our home base, which was fabulous. We were over a warm front. I observed several other aircraft being in that, over that warm front, just like us. They've been crippled over Berlin, and they were under attack from 88s. I mean Ju-88s.
And you were lucky.
And so they would dive into the clouds and evade that, and we never were attacked, which I considered a very lucky situation. And Neff and Hadley got us back to our base, where we fired a red flare, and the ambulance cart came out and picked Hadley out of our aircraft, putting him in a cocoon, a bamboo-like structure where they could wrap him in it and then carry him in through the aircraft to the rear exit unit and put him in an ambulance and took him off to the hospital.
Can you describe the landing?
The landing by either Howard or Hadley was we came in for a landing, and we landed once, twice, 3 times, 4 times. In other words, we bounced it. But we landed safely, and it was the most wonderful feeling we could have. We came down safely. And we stopped off in the field, off the side of the runway, and we'd fired a red flare, so they did send the meat wagon out to meet us.
In your opinion, did Chuck Neff's actions that day save the plane and crew?
Chuck Neff and Hadley saved all of us. They navigated the airplane home. Chuck assisted the co-pilot, and we flew back to our base, landed there, and it was absolutely, they saved our lives. We used to attend a briefing every morning. We'd get up early on mission day, and we'd go to the briefing room, and the fellow, our commanding officer, would be there and would show us he'd draw a curtain, and we'd see what the mission of the day was going to be. And if it was in a deep penetration position, everybody went ooh and ah. And it was that was the big key point. But what were you thinking?
You described to me that
What's
you
that?
broke the ice a little bit, Dad.
Oh yeah, I remember I would start singing a little song about wham, rebop, boom, bam. We're killer dillers, yes we were.
And the reason for that was
Because-
the airplane getting hit with flak was wham bam.
Yeah, well,
Which broke up the crowd.
this was a briefing just to
Yeah.
describe the mission we were getting. I knew that was going to be a tough mission. This was again a Berlin raid.
How many missions did you have to Berlin?
Oh, God, I went to Berlin about 3 times. Each one was quite something.
Describe the flak at Berlin.
It was the flak at Berlin was intense, very heavy flak, and we'd start at Potsdam. That was our entry in Berlin, and then we were probably hitting I think it was a Friedrichstrasse station that we hit the first time, and I don't know the other actual conditions of what we hit, but they were really tough. We'd start getting flak from Potsdam into Berlin proper. And yeah, we had 3 missions into Berlin.
Were you attacked by enemy aircraft also?
No, we were not. We watched for aircraft. The only aircraft I spotted very often would be down at several thousand feet below us. I would see aircraft, but they never attacked us.
On those raids, because you had them attack you on other raids.
On other raids, really, no, we didn't.
We've got some pictures of airplanes.
My first aircraft I saw were over the first time I spotted German aircraft were over Paris. In other words, I was looking down, and below us, about 5,000 feet, were a bunch of Me-109s, and I think they'd been on a night raid. That was my impression because they were painted black, and it was exciting to see them. As a matter of fact, I got a little sick. It popped up a little bit of bubble from me, since they were the first aircraft I'd seen.
That's one of your first missions.
Enemy aircraft. It was a 5th mission, and that was an exciting event for me.
One other thing, when you were on those Berlin raids, and you dropped the bombs, remember what the group lead said?
What's that now?
Remember you told me what the group lead said when you finally bombs away, and what did he say over the radio?
Okay.
Let's get out of here, right?
Yeah, oh, you bet. Let's get out of here.
That's
when
neat.
the bombs were away. We gotta let's get out of here. Absolutely.
Getting shot up for a lot of time.
You aren't kidding. Let's get out of here. That was the big deal after we bombs away.